Hi, I'm Mark Baker, head of school of Gann Academy in Waltham, Massachusetts, a pluralistic high school from ages 9 to 12.
I'm David Jaffe. I'm the Mashgiach Chani, or spiritual advisor at Gann Academy.
So one of the really exciting initiatives that we've undertaken in the last few years under David's leadership has been what we're calling Chanoch L'Na'ar, educate a child according to his or her way, and we think of it as a school-wide initiative in character and Jewish identity development, and it has also become the foundation for school-wide leadership development as well. David, maybe you could share a little bit about how Chanoch L'Na'ar came to be, and how you came to bring this Musar-based character development work together.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. The literature in education right now, just even recent newsletters, Harvard newsletter, others are talking a lot about grit, resilience, kind of the non-cognitive skills that are essential for success. And about 4 years ago, I guess it was, or 5 years ago, we were looking at the culture of the school and how do we build up those non-cognitive skills for our students. And we want to look at the culture change in the school. Personally, myself, I have background in the field of Musar, or Jewish ethical development, and thought that would be a great match for Jewish school to work on skills of character and non-cognitive skills. And so we ended up creating a program where we went to the faculty, asked them what we thought were the key issues in the school. And things came up like social exclusion, entitlement, things like that. And we figured what were the midot, or character traits, that would be essential to really moving on those. And we came up with humility, integrity, kavod, respect, these kind of things. And we took Musar methodologies, and which include studying the Torah, about these particular character traits, and so grounding it in Judaism, and then taking on practices on a regular basis, like small practices you would try out daily to build this midah for yourself. And we started with faculty, which I think was a key move, in that we wanted to do culture change, we really want to start with the adults. So we had our whole 9th grade faculty go through a year of this learning and reflective practice together, and then spread it out to students. And at the same time, we thought, well, it would be a great idea to do it with the leadership team as well. And so that's how we came into then doing it with the leadership.
So one of the things that's, I think, amazing about this program, David said it, but I want to emphasize it, is that so many character development programs involve putting up a list of values or attributes, you put them on the wall, you do some programs on them, and it's really about the kids. We really feel and believe that if you want to shape a school culture and you want to shape a deeply Jewish language and framework for that school culture, you have to start with the adults. And what's powerful about this that we have seen is that the nature of this work is not simple, it's not quick, it's not just about learning a new name for a value that you aspire to live out. It's actually about the work of personal growth and development. One of the things we've said to our educators is that how you work is deeply connected to who you are as a person, and if you're Jewish, as a Jew. And so our growth and development as Jews and as people is integrally connected to our growth and development as professionals and as leaders.
I just want to give a couple examples that have come up on the faculty and student level. A faculty member, we were working that month on Navar, humility, and kind of taking an appropriate role, taking appropriate space. And this particular teacher was really dealing with how her own identity, she was a Balat Tshuva, kind of became religious a little bit later in life, and her own religious identity and how she was interacting with the kids, and did she feel authentic or not authentic with kids, and it was a big struggle for her. And through the work on this, of trying to figure out, the way we work on Anavan in our school, humility is taking appropriate space for any particular moment, and where you need to step up, where you need to step back. And for her, she kind of came through this process of working on this and then presenting to our group about it and getting feedback from our group about it, that she was really being way too kind of binary in the way that she was dealing with these issues. That it was either all or nothing. Either she was, either you were like totally religious or you were bad, or like kind of this thing. And it was a real growth for her, and seeing that she really needed to take the appropriate space with the students. She needed to be able to hold the complexity of Jewish identity, and that came directly out of this work. And that's one example of how this worked. Another is we had a faculty member, we work on something called choice points, which is from Ariel Dessler, who was a Musar master of the 20th century. And paying a lot of attention to where these choice points are in your day and in your life. She created a unit for Sefer Yonah that had the students look for the choice points in Yonah's life, and out of those choice points and the choices Yonah made, what can we tell about his character and the kind of person he was? So she kind of took the Musar practices, mapped them onto this lesson, and had it as a way for the kids to learn through the class, which is what we're really looking for our teachers to be doing as a way of bringing this into the full full school experience.
So I want to share a bit about how this turned into a leadership development initiative. After a year of trying this out with faculty and beginning to think about rolling it out to students, David and I kind of discovered or uncovered the obvious, which is if we really want this to shape our school culture, it's got to start with the top. It's got to start with me, it's got to start with my senior leadership team, and now we've actually rolled it out to the entire mid-level leadership of the school. And one of the things that we felt committed to was, of course, giving them this Jewish values, language, and framework for their own living and teaching and leading. But also, we really believe that this work can not only be Jewishly purposeful, but actually can be a form of leadership development. So we collaborated together with a colleague of ours named Marilyn Paul, who's actually a leadership coach and organizational development expert, and we've been building units that we do with our senior and our mid-level leadership around kind of core attributes of our school culture, core elements of effective leadership, of teamwork, of organizational strength and sustainability, and integrating them with the personal work we need to do to grow as leaders, all based in this kind of Musar approach. The example I would share is actually just a few weeks ago, we had around the table 18 director and dean level people in the school. We're talking about educators, non-educators, Jews, non-Jews, and we are studying the midah of emunah, trustworthiness. And we're exploring the question of what does it mean to have a culture of trust and to be a leader who people trust. And we're studying a biblical text with a traditional commentary. And here we are in Chavruta for 10, 20, 30 minutes dwelling in this kind of Jewish text with a rabbinic interpretation of a metaphor for what trustworthiness means. And we actually looked at the metaphor of a tent stake in the ground and thinking about what it means to be solid ground and a trustworthy stake and to hold up the tent. The conversations that ensued around that, all inspired by this traditional Jewish text and language and framework, was extraordinary. I mean, so oftentimes we talk about trust in schools. We don't have enough trust. We don't trust each other. No one knows what that even means. And here we got deep into this issue of what it means to be trusted as a leader, to trust others, largely because our conversation was animated by the Jewish learning.
Well, I would say to that I think we found something working with the leadership team last year and then again this year about the power of metaphor. And particularly that particular text is one of idea of tent peg and solid ground. The richness of that discussion that happened among the leadership team of who is the solid, who's the ground, who's the tent peg. Ground sometimes need to be, it can't be too solid or you can't get a peg in, but it can't be too loose or it falls out. That was the nature of the discussion with these kind of things, playing with the metaphor. And it gave people something different than, like if we had just kind of maybe you would set a text to begin, give it to our Torah or something like that. It was so rich and has informed discussion really for months. I want to give one other example that if you remember this from last year. In studying emunah, this is a little bit detailed, but the word emunah, aleph mem nun, from that root, can be understood to be the aleph being the kind of original idea, the mem being kind of how it is brought into reality, and then the nun being continuing, because the nun sofit goes along, continues out going forward. We talk about that in terms of ideas generated, and then what happens to it afterwards. And this really was transformative for some of the people on the leadership team of realizing that, you know what, we bat around a lot of ideas, but they don't get grounded anywhere, and then they're kind of sitting out there, and that creates tremendous stress. And so we resolved after that to actually take on a practice of, people even called it clarifying the mems, or clarify, and using that language, and brought that into their meeting with their supervisors. And it really shifted the trust in the group.
It did. I mean, I think one of the things we're finding is that, look, it's not like this is easy work. It's not like people are just ready to dive into this, make themselves vulnerable, embrace Jewish language. There's work to do, and everyone's in a different place around this. But we believe strongly that, first of all, Jewishly purposeful leadership involves the willingness to commit yourself to being on a journey of growth, personally and professionally, and that requires a framework for building a culture that supports that. That means inviting people into the room and inviting their vulnerabilities and their concerns and their imperfections and their aspirations into a room. And the midah becomes a kind of anchor for that work. We have chavruta partner meetings in the middle of our sessions to kind of check in with each other about commitments we've taken on. And it's just this incredible combination of practicality, but also kind of really deep reflective practice that builds a community of people that I think are committed to growing, committed to being professionally effective, and committed to doing it in a way that where Judaism provides the meaning and the framework.
it's nice to say. I think Marc has modeled that really nicely from the top. One concept I'll add, everything you said there, is kind of learning from failure and really being able to take risks and fail. There's a key concept in Musar called Namdus, which is about being a constant learner. And that is such a trope in our school right now. I think from that word, Marc talks about it, in front of the group, faculty in service last year, we learned a whole text about it. And as those concepts get more and more part of the school, it becomes safer to take risks, safer to learn from failure, and people are open to that kind of thing.
And I guess I would conclude, unless you want to add anything afterwards, by bringing this back to where we started, which is how does the school leadership link to your core educational vision for your students? Which hopefully it does. I mean, so many schools are thinking a lot, hopefully, about the way they want their students to learn, but they're not necessarily thinking about how their leaders learn and whether the culture at the leadership level of the school actually mirrors and models the culture that they want to have in their classrooms and with their teachers. And kind of, this is a vision of a school that is committed to kind of voracious learning and growth, that is inspired and grounded in Jewish learning, Jewish wisdom, Jewish practice. And what we're finding, I think, is that our leaders feel more connected to what's happening with our students and are able to translate this into leadership and then teaching and learning at every level of the institution. We're in many ways at the beginning of this process, but it's extraordinary to see how it's rolling out into a culture.
We're learning, I'll just add, we're learning about this as we go, and I think it's important also to say that the rigor that we bring to our academic program, we are seeing that as actually the same rigor that we bring to the non-cognitive aspects of our program, which more and more research is showing how important that is. And one of the ways I kind of somewhat tongue-in-cheek talk about it is that this is AP emotional intelligence, the type of thing that we're trying to do. And so I just think that that consistency of both on the cognitive, non-cognitive areas are kind of one of our hallmarks of us.
Great. Do you have any advice for other schools who are interested in doing something similar, exploring Musar, encouraging their leadership to think more about these issues? Where would you suggest schools start, and what initial challenges do you think they'll face, or what advice would you have for them?
I would just, I think it's very important to start at the top. And one of the very early ways we got started with this was Marc and I actually learning together. And I think things grew kind of from there. So I think that's very important. So it's very important for the leadership, whether it's leadership team or the head, to have a sense of what this is and what Musar is and what its potential is. So that's just one start.
I would say, first of all, that the building of a reflective culture takes time, but is doable. I think many people think, we're never going to do this in our school. This isn't how we talk, this isn't what we do. I think that people are open to it, but I think it takes time. I think making the kind of culture we want to create as leaders explicit, setting kind of expectations for norms of discourse, that you can start practicing tomorrow. You can start practicing open, honest communication. You can start practicing sharing risks we think we're taking. You can start talking about what it means to create a safe space for us to do that. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think that you could begin to build the building blocks of that, because we think a real culture of learning and growth requires that kind of investment. The other thing I would say is this does not happen overnight. This takes time, and I think investing in it has payoffs in the long term. Don't look for immediate payoffs. Don't give up in 2 months when you realize, what do those conversations translate into? We had plenty of people on our team at the beginning who were a little suspicious about this, because it's not your classic leadership development. How am I going to walk out tomorrow and be a better leader because of this? Part of it is just saying over and over again, we really believe if you invest in being a better person, a more effective person, a more reflective person, if you do that in community, you ultimately will translate that into being a more effective leader, and hopefully into modeling the Jewish mission and vision of the school when you find Judaism as a source of meaning and inspiration for your own growth and development.
Just to agree with everything, just to add that Musar's technology of growth is one of the image of the water dropping on the rock in Rabbi Akiva. It's slow, persistent effort. Makes deep, lasting change. And so just add that to everything Marc said, that this is a program that takes time, but it's worth it. And you do see some changes, at increments, but very important to start with faculty administrators before bringing it to the students.
Great. Thank you.